Today, we're super excited to have Brian and Liz from epaCUBE joining us to go over pricing optimization for Enforce ERPs. You guys may know Brian. He's got a great story to tell, some really engaging slides here. I'm going to pass it over to him. This will be recorded, so if there's others on your team that will not be able to make it today, we will be posting this over to Central Data TV. So Brian, take it away.
Thanks, Shane. It's great to be here, and I want to echo what Shane said too. Last day of the month, and to take time out of your day to spend this next half hour, 45 minutes with me is very meaningful. So thank you for that. I know that does count, right? Time is everything sometimes. So great to be here. We're going to talk about pricing optimization. Here's who we are. Brian Friedle. If you've not been on one of my webinars before or seen me around TUG, I've been knocking around the industry for about 7 years. Before that, I spent 24 years in distribution myself, spent the last 13 of those running an electrical distributorship. I still see myself as a distributor. I'm in the software world now, but once a distributor, always a distributor. epaCUBE, very similar. All we do is distribution. Over 20 years, we got more than 2 decades into this and pricing optimization. My story is not unique. Almost everybody at epaCUBE has worked in distribution for many years. They have sat in your seats. They've been pricing managers. They've been executives. We look for people that have that experience. It's one of the things that really sets us apart from the competition out there. So we're going to talk about pricing today. The webinar is going to be about observations that we've made, things that we have seen in our 20 years that really raise the level of pricing strategy and the difference between the ones that are really doing it well, they've just got a stranglehold on this, versus ones that are just getting started and still learning and making this a project. And no shame in that. There's so much to do in a distribution company. But let's talk about what some of those differences are. For instance, this is pretty common for us when we talk to a distribution company. And we like to find out, what's the current state, what's going on right now today, and these are some of the things that we hear. They got to make sure that they're matching the competition with their pricing. Oftentimes it's sales rep driven. There's some challenges with that. There's some good things with it too. We'll talk some of that through. Oftentimes customer feedback goes into it, which is smart. That's good information to have if you can get it. And also it's pretty common that there's a preset idea. I'm going to make 25 points. I need to make 30 points on this, and we just do it by the margin that we'd like to have. And the reality is, it's usually some combination of these 4 that we hear from people. So there's some other ways, some other things to factor in, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I've got 7 areas that we're going to explore. Actually 7.5. I snuck a half in there, you'll see. To talk through this. So let's just talk about what those 7 things are that really make a difference, I think, in a pricing strategy. So the first one is, great distributors doing this. They are making pricing decisions that are data driven. I can't emphasize this enough. There's a reason this is number 1, right? There's so many pitfalls from just winging it. And what this really looks like is the first case is, you need to understand who your customer base are, where they fit in your strategy, where they fit in your market, what are their buying behaviors to do with you, and how does that fit? So segmentation is thing 1. And from there, we can overlay and understand the sales that goes into that and your data. And this combination gets us to what we think are the right price, and to get to that the first time and have that available in your pricing matrix. It sounds pretty simple, but there's a lot that goes into it, and we're going to talk through some of those things today. There is actually another step that's not on this slide, which is measure, right? You have to make sure that what you're doing is having the effect that you want it to have. It's a pretty common fear with distributors of, we are the profit optimizing people, not the sales hindering people, right? We want to make sure that the choices that we make are good ones. So we're going to measure it as well. And the idea here is, once we really understand who your good customers are and how they're buying, and group together similar ones, and we're going to talk about that here in just a minute, and then we can look at that over top of product groups, and we can see places where the data shows us this is what you can charge, but you're only charging less. Okay, there's opportunity. Those are places where we can go safely and strategically raise the prices. And that's what we're looking to do. And it all comes from your data. So here's why this is important. The first thing is, when emotion gets involved, strange things happen. And there's some real common ones, right? Anybody who's been in sales knows the first one. It's a fear of losing the order, right? You'd rather have a little bit of something than nothing of a lot, right? It's just an axiom to sales. But what happens with that on our minds as salespeople is over time, that does cause some margin erosion. And we want to try to get away from that thinking. Another one that's real common is just avoiding an uncomfortable conversation. A lot of the sales teams in our companies have not really been trained in how to deal with that when a customer says, "Whoa, Friedle, you're trying to kill me here." Okay, what do you say next? How do you turn that into negotiation? How do you, move past that to a conversation about value? There's a lot of things that can occur at that point, but the reality is what happens most of the time is, "Oh, sorry, here, let me give you a discount," and they do. Maybe that's the right move, maybe it's not. And that's what we want to try to do. The third one that happens really commonly across sales teams is, they're out there developing a relationship with people. And many of them become friends, and you want to be liked, and you want to be a good person, and you want to do right by them. And that tends to erode margin as well. For anybody who's been on my webinars before, you've heard me say this, but I had a really great mentor early on in my career who taught me something about this. And what he said is Brian, it's okay to want to be liked. You just have to understand that a need to be liked costs money. And often that shows up in pricing situations. And so we want to try to take those things off the table. And they're very human ways to be. I wouldn't have our species be any other way. I mean, it's good, but it's also why we're not that well suited to do pricing on our own without some help from an impartial program. The second one there, every person, it's human nature, has, a history and patterns and ways of thinking about things. It's kind of amazing to me how salespeople think that the price their customer is willing to pay lands on an even factor of 5%. You come across these situations. I always put 20% on item A for customer X. The real world's not that clean, right? The price they're willing to pay probably doesn't land on an even 5%, and the data will show you where that price really is. And so we want to use that, the sales history, the data, and your knowledge of the business, and that combination together really gets you to the promised land. And this is that half one I told you about, 1A. 1A, great distributors understand the relationship between price and value for them, emphasizing for them, right? Because this is capitalism at its best, right? Capitalism is all about, the prices people are willing to pay is proportional to the value you provide or the value they perceive. But here's the thing, your value is unique, right? There is no other distributor on the planet that has the same combination of people and situation and products and attitude and executive choices and the other, specific value adds that you may provide in your business. And those are all yours. That's why the data, your data, is so important to come up with that price. If somebody from the outside comes along and says, "Here, you need to charge this," they don't know. You know. Right? What are your customers willing to pay for that? And what I want to challenge you a little bit here is to let go of the preconceived notion of margin percent. Who cares what the number is? Okay. And salespeople can get in a space, and pricing managers too, where you have this range in your mind of what you think a customer is willing to pay. And if it gets outside of that range, you start to get uncomfortable, right? You're taking advantage of them. This is too high. This is going to be a problem. It's just a number, right? What really matters is what they're willing to pay, and the problem with that was on the last slide, right? We're human. And so we have these kinds of things. But let's take it out of that. Who cares what the number is? We had an opportunity to kind of prove this out with our software. I'll tell you a quick story. We have a module called our sales assistant, where we have the ability, when a salesperson or whomever is taking care of a customer, clicks on a price at the point of order entry, this screen comes up. And the screen comes up and it shows them the floor, the target, and the ceiling for that type of customer, for that group of products. And what our customer noticed was all of their people were pricing it just above floor, right? It was the lowest they could go and not get yelled at. And so a whole bunch of business was going through right there. And in this customer's opinion, it was just arbitrary. They were just, wanting to get to a certain percentage. So they came to us and said, hey, can you remove the floor? Sure. So we took the floor number off of the screen. And so all that came up was the target and the ceiling. And guess what happened? Right? All of the prices started to get loaded in or set at the target, and there wasn't any problem at all. Nothing even hiccuped. It sailed right on through. And so, we have these arbitrary ideas what we think it should be, but the target was arrived at by the data that was in the system, and it worked extremely well. So that's a lot of verbiage here to just simply say, follow the data. Whether it suggests 13% or 43%, switch your thinking from how much margin percent to what are they willing to pay. And how do you know that? Yeah, use the data. Okay, number 2. Great distributors segment on more than just volume. It is really common when we talk to distributors that if they do segmentation at all, it's usually by vertical. And so it's by type of their customer. If they take another step, they might throw in that volume card, right? And separate into small, medium, and large. And there's so much more to this, and there's so much more information you can get from it. What you're looking at here, a picture of, is our segmentation tool. This is based on the Texas A&M model, and those vertical bars that you see, those are sliders. So why this matters is because we really want to get to the heart of the value of customers to your business. Who is similar to them? How is their buying practices? How do they affect your company? And how do they match what you want for your company? Because you might be in various different states, right? Volume may be your key right now. You're going after a market share play and you want to get every customer you can get. Great. Maybe not though. Maybe your cash flow is a challenge for you right now. I've been there before when I was in distribution. So in that case, a high volume, low margin, slow paying customer, it's murder. It's terrible. That's your worst customer you could have. So you get an opportunity to go into these sliders, slide them around, and declare what's most important to your company today and weight them that way. A bit of an eye chart on the other one. So these are actually the categories in there. Pretty good lineup here, and we pull these right out of your data. So once you have that, you can see who your A and your B and your C and your D customers are and how they're grouped together. That's gold, because what do you want to do with your pricing, right? What's the whole point? You want to attract your A and B customers, right? You want to make sure that you are a very attractive option for them. And your C and D customers, get top dollar. Why not? Right? You're just a convenience for them probably. So once we know these things, we can make choices and understand what's going on in our company, not only around pricing, because here's something that's kind of cool. We get to see how each company rates in each of those categories. So we get an overall rating. We understand if they're A, B, C, or D, but we can see how they do in each of these categories too. What a great option. Now, it's a conversation starter, right? Let's understand what they're good and bad about. Let's make our sales team aware of this. Let's help turn every customer into an A and B customer. The other thing that comes up is, prioritization, because there's only so much time. And so are your salespeople calling on the best customers they have on their account list for your business today? They'll tell you that they are. They're not. I guarantee it. In 31 years in distribution, I have never yet met a salesperson who could accurately name their top 10 accounts according to what's important to that company. It's a great opportunity. So there's kind of a bigger picture here too that I want to point out, and I don't want to gloss over this. How many of you out there have a love-hate relationship with many of your best customers, right? I mean, you ever feel stuck because you're just chasing dollars instead of promoting your particular business model? I see some heads nodding out there. No, I don't. I can't actually see, but I know they are, because it's the way this goes. We end up in distribution, chasing business. Well, by doing this, you are declaring and prioritizing and spending time with those customers that are your people, those customers you really want to have. You want them to be your core. This is where you've staked out your claim in the marketplace. And one of the ways that you declare that and communicate that is with your pricing. So it's part of an overall larger pricing strategy. Number 3, great distributors don't confuse their customers with their pricing. This is obvious, right? I mean, you've got to get to the right price the first time. It needs to be consistent, right? And it stays consistent, and it comes from a belief from your sales staff or your pricing managers in the matrix, right? They don't feel a need to change it because A, it is a good price. B, they know where it came from. It's transparent. We're going to talk about transparency here in a little bit. Super important, so that they will leave it alone, and the customer always gets the same price. Because today, maybe salesperson Bob doesn't have such a strong following because of his sunny personality or his stunning good looks, right? He's handing out discounts like candy. The customers know to call Bob to get the best price. Well, that's not a good way to do business. And the fact is, your customers are going to be irritated as heck with you if they have to check every invoice to see if they got the right price. So get to the right price, give it to them the first time, stand on it, know it, keep it consistent. It's an obvious one, right? Once you've established good pricing in your matrix, right, that you're happy with and is profitable as you can make it without choking sales, overrides become a really interesting source of information. And we capture that. We monitor it on our scorecard, because if you make a change in the pricing and suddenly you see a spike in the overrides, like you see in this picture here on week 12, there's a clue, right? That's the clue phone ringing. So one of 3 things is going on here, right? You've either got an education problem with whoever's doing the pricing. You may have a cultural problem, not buying into the system. By the way, very real things. These are things that need to be addressed. But the third one is the coolest, which is maybe it's just good feedback, right? And when you've got everything else humming along and everybody's believing in the system, then that's what's left. What competitive feedback did you get? Great, let's incorporate it. And you start this loop that goes into the pricing as you go. And so by monitoring the pricing overrides, you really get some good information, and you should see them go down over time as, again, that confidence occurs in what's going on. Yep, talked about this. Incidentally, the left picture there is that sales assistant I was talking about, where it pops up and gives you the floor and the target and the ceiling. So yeah, the overrides really are telling as far as how things are going for you. Number 5, great distributors don't manage pricing with spreadsheets. That's a picture of an abacus. The abacus is to the calculator as Excel spreadsheets are to a good pricing tool today. Okay, exaggerating a little bit, but because let's face it, Excel changed the world when it came out. But it is true. Excel really, it's a blunt instrument when it comes to pricing, right? It's hunting flies with a sledgehammer, because you want to get very surgical with your pricing. You want to really define it down to the right thing for the right groups and the right products. And anything more complex than a big broad brush with Excel and pricing gets very complicated, and it gets very complicated very quick. And so what you end up doing is, what I call the peanut butter theory. You're just going to spread it thick across the top, and everybody's going to get what they get. We can do better. We can do better with that than that with a good pricing tool. And because pricing is dynamic, right? If you spend any time as a pricing manager or involved in that side of the business, things change. right? How many external changes have we seen over the last 4 years, along with internal ones, along with competitive things that happen, and every time something like that happens, if you're doing this in Excel, start over. Do not pass go, do not collect 200, right? You're gonna go back to the beginning and you're gonna recreate all these things again. And that forces you to, do it with a very broad brush, or you just flat out fall behind. So yeah, set the spreadsheet down. This is a common concern that we come across, and this is talking about black box solutions. What I mean by black box solution is you don't get to have the visibility into what's going on, right? Somebody will come along, whether it's a consultant or another pricing tool, and they will grab all of your data, they dump it into this big black box that you can't see inside of, turn the crank, spin the crank, and poof, out comes your pricing. And from that, you're supposed to go make changes. And often there will be some improvement from that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, people build businesses around this too. But the problem is it doesn't address a bunch of things. First of all, you lose control of your pricing, which is a very common concern that we talk to people about. A third party that doesn't know your business, doesn't know the situation, doesn't know what's going on, doesn't know your customer base, doesn't know your unique value props, is just going to tell you what the price should be. I don't recommend it. Okay. And some of them will actually start charging you every time they turn the crank, or it's, hey, see you in a year when it's time to renew. Thanks for your business. So we want to do a better way. We want to keep you in charge of your business. And again, this is around the data. So to have the most effective pricing, it has to be a combination of your data plus your knowledge, and you get there by having a pricing tool that has visibility into it. You keep the choices. Right now, we have an amazing customer success team, and we'd be with you every step of the way because that's what we do. We're not a toss it over the fence and walk away company. But because they've been pricing managers, they've probably worked with your ERP. They've done the things that you're doing, and we're going to offer best practices. We're going to offer you things that we observe. We're going to make suggestions, but we're not going to tell you what the choice is. The ultimate choice of how you proceed to build your pricing strategy is yours. And distributors who really do well with this understand that you can't get to the best by giving up control. You just can't. You're in business for a reason. Okay, number 7. Great distributors don't neglect their price or customer specific and contract pricing. This is a necessary evil, right? There's a time and a place for a specific contract price for a specific product, specific customer, right? These things happen. The problem is they grow over time. Many distributors we talk to have literally thousands of these because it's as simple as, a salesperson calls up the pricing manager, or God forbid does it themselves, and enters in, hey, I have to have this price for this product for this customer. And that may have happened 10 years ago. Nobody's really monitored, nobody's kept up with it. And the reason that it gets neglected is because nobody wants to do it. It's not a fun job to update all these things. And the pricing manager will send out an email to each of the salespeople who have contracts in there and say, hey, look at review this, tell me what the price should be. Do we need to make a change? Do we need to keep this? And oftentimes they get crickets back, and it just kind of goes unnoticed, and another year happens. So we want to encourage people to really pay attention to this. Now, ideally, in Brian's perfect world, which Brian rarely gets, you don't have specific contracts at all, and everybody fits nice and neat into this pretty matrix, but it doesn't always. So let's examine this. Let's have a complete pricing strategy that incorporates these contracts. And a good pricing tool is going to do more than just help administratively. It's also going to do that, right? Administratively, we need to do things like, let's pay attention to when these things are going to expire, right? Let's get a countdown. Let's get somebody waving their hand at you saying, hey, this is going to expire. We need to fix this. We need to renew, do whatever we're going to do, because if it does expire and then the price the customer is used to getting suddenly doesn't show up, now you're doing credit and rebills. If there's a manufacturer involved, okay, now you got to deal with a whole nother negotiation, all of those goodies. So let's pay attention to that. It's also pretty nice to see what's being used and what's not being used. We've talked about some ancillary sales benefits here with a good pricing tool. One of those is a conversation with a customer when you see a whole contract that's not being used. It's like, hey, Mrs. Customer, you told me that if I got you this price on these products, you'd buy them from me. What happened? Right? Let's monitor that. Let's turn that into a positive thing. If nothing else, you're going to learn something about your customer, especially if they're just using you for somebody else or whatever the case may be. But let's know, right? This is good knowledge to have. So that's kind of the administrative portion, is having the ability to see some of these things. But there's more to it, because we can also offer a context here. Does this make sense? How off of the matrix price is it? Many ERPs have a multitude of pricing levels and ability to do pricing different ways. We can see where this product has been sold at all different situations and all different levels, and have the context of, boy, does this really make sense? And the goal is to raise this appropriately, or if you can, push it back into the matrix, because that's where your levers are, your dials and your wheels and your levers, that where you're going to maximize your profitability. The more stuff you can keep in the matrix, the better off you are. So, one of the things we try to do is look at this as not just an administrative benefit, which is significant, but it's also a profit center. This is a place where we can go look to see where we can improve profitability with it. You just don't want these things sitting there and festering for years and years and years, because it erodes. It erodes over time. All right, that was my 7. But wait, I have a bonus. There is one more, and I was thinking about this as I'm putting this deck together, and there's one more thing that's just super important. And the fact is, this is a change, sometimes a very significant one, and you have to lean into that to be effective, right? I mean, and great distributors do this well, because this is one of the things that separates the distributors who have just good ideas from the ones that make good changes, right? You're going to conferences oftentimes, you're getting input, you're on the internet, you're hearing these ideas, you get fired up, but how do you implement? Right? A good implementation strategy and a change management and culture change, these are all very, very important keys. And the reality is that a great idea that is poorly executed is kind of worthless, right? It is trumped every time by a mediocre idea that's been well executed, right? So don't ignore this. Tooting our horn just a little bit here, working with a pricing company that's been around doing this for 2 decades, we have managed these things. We have learned these things. We can give you those best practices. We can help you through the pains of process change, whatever it is, and culture change that comes along with this. And pricing is something that's very near and dear to people, right? This thing powers a lot of pocketbooks. And so, you want to get it right, and you need to have that buy-in. So I just want to encourage everybody, whatever your initiative, whether it's us or not, do a good job of maintaining this and make it part of your project plan, because if you don't, you're going to miss some opportunities. Okay, folks, we arrived. Few last thoughts. I'm sure it's no surprise. epaCUBE, our pricing optimization software. The reason we're doing this webinar, right? I wanted to expose this to you, expose you to this. That's probably a better way to say that, and give you an idea of what we do. I'm sure it's no surprise. Our pricing optimization tool does everything that you saw here out of the box. It's been developed over a long period of time. It's been refined. It's only for distribution. If this is interesting, if you saw your company in here, let's talk, right? If you hit all 7 of these, firing on all cylinders, next time you're going to do the webinar, and good on you. Congratulations. But most distributors have got some places they can improve. We would like to help. We built a whole business around doing that. And so would love to talk to you if that's interesting at all. And, because I never say never. other than right there. But it is really, really hard to find a project with a bigger impact to your business than creating a consistent, profitable pricing strategy. And we're at the end of the year, but there is still time to hit the ground running in 2024 with this. If your budget is already established for 2024, okay. I like to say that our product doesn't consume budget, it creates it. And yes, that's a little bit of a cheesy line, I admit it, but it's still true. And there are some upfront costs. So if you've got some budget constraints, because we're talking about this in December, talk to me anyway. There are lots of ways that we'll figure out a way to shoehorn this thing in. If there's value here for you and it's something you think that you need, let's talk. So of course, this is my contact info. I am going to bring Liz and Shane back in. If there's any questions, I'm very happy to answer them at this time. Please, if you think of something or you have something you'd like to talk through, email me, call me, whatever. Happy to do it after the fact as well. What say y'all? Did we get any questions?